Hello there, it's Paul here and welcome along everyone. We're fast approaching Christmas and I dare say there's been an awful lot of Christmas ornaments made already. However, I dare say there's an awful lot of people out there who have never made a Christmas ornament before, and that could be because they're new turners, it could be because of budget, because they don't have things like hollowing tools and really don't know the best way to do it. So on this video I'm going to show how I made this Christmas ornament. It weighs in at 16.1 grams, which is actually lighter than this little piece of oak here. For this, I didn't use any special tools whatsoever. It was just all the bulk standard tools that even any new turner will have. This is just an example of a very, very straightforward basic shape with a finial, just to make it look a little bit more elegant. I'm using a piece of oak here, and it's a little bit oversized, so once I've got this trued up and mounted in the chuck, I will then cut it down to the size that I want to use. Using the spindle roughing gauge is certainly by far the quickest way to true this up. Once I've got it trued up, I just use the skewer to give the end a straight edge and then just put the tenon on, just using the calipers to gauge the size. You can see this is mounted in the chuck here. It's still not fully true, but it's just the quickest way to cut it down to size. Once I've got that down to size, I then put another tenon on the other end. Here's where I now create the basic shape just using an ordinary spindle gouge. I'm trying to get the shape as accurate as possible, because once you do hollow out the inside, the walls are going to be reasonably thin and not much room for altering the shape. I'm going for a fairly simple basic shape here. I suppose it's a bit like an acorn shape. Once I've got this to the right shape, I will then part this in half. Each half can then be mounted into the chuck and then just manually hollowed out with the spindle gouge still. Just making sure that I stop reasonably regularly on this to make sure that the walls don't get too thin. Once everything is glued back together again, I will do finishing cuts over the whole piece. Unfortunately, my second camera didn't record, which is why you've only got the top view here, so it's not too helpful. Because this is a tree ornament, you need to get the weight down as much as possible, so anything to reduce the weight, and which is why I just give the inside a bit of a sand, because it just helps tidy up the inside and just reduce the weight by that little bit extra. The joins ideally want to be as flat as possible, at least that way when it's all glued up again there's no gapping in the joins, which is why I just use a sanding board over the edges. I'm using a piece of sapele to create the inner band. The quickest way with this, so that I can get this mounted onto the chuck, is to just use the live centre to push it up against the chuck jaws, true it up, put a tenon on there so that I can then turn it around onto the chuck. Once I've got it onto the chuck, I can then fully true it up. I've used my calipers to take a measurement of the inside of the ornament, marking that onto the work. I then slowly take this down so that the tenon fits inside. It doesn't have to be a really snug tight fit. It's nice if it is, because at least that way when you do glue up, the glue sets a lot quicker. Once that tenon is fitting properly, quick glue on there, just ordinary wood PVA glue. It's just held in place for 15 minutes before I then start turning it down. Remove the original tenon that's on the other side and then start marking it out to fit the other half. But I don't want this too thick, so it's just a case of constantly taking small and small pieces away, starting and stopping all the time, just to make sure whether it fits or not. Again, to keep the weight down, I take out all the inside of the parts that are not necessary. The tenons on here are really only just for locating the two halves. When you put the two halves together, they locate better and there's more chance of running true. However, as you'll see, once it is all glued up, the two halves don't run fully true, which is why not to take the walls down too thin, because then at least when you do your finishing cuts and true it all up, you've still got a little bit of wood left there. Simply just taking down that new inner join part. For the bottom part of this, I don't want to go straight down to an overall point, because I want to put a long finial on the bottom, so there needs to be some form of a flat spot on the bottom. Once the bulk of the woods have been removed, so there's no more tailstock support, it really is a case of working this slowly. You can hear the tone change in the wood when you're cutting, of the whole piece being so hollow. So that I can locate the finial in the bottom, I've drilled a 3mm hole. For finish wise, I've gone for total change, I've gone for the Triple E Ultra Wax and the Shallow Wax. The Triple E is basically a paste wax, very much like Yorkshire Grit, and the Shallow Wax is a shellac based friction polish. You can use any finish on this. Normally with my Christmas ornaments I would give them a spray varnish. You get that nice high gloss shine, and it's a lot harder wearing. For the cap and the finial, I'm just using a piece of sapele again. This is my personal preference for using the skew. It's just so much nicer to use. You can get those sharper edges, you can get in at the angles a lot better than you can with a spindle gouge. That's certainly not saying you have to use the skew here. It is my total preference. For the button, it's a really simple piece. I just wanted to overhang the top so that it covers up all the parts that the polish didn't get onto. Then for the finial, exactly the same again, just using the skew, slowly working on this because the wood is fairly thin. As I get through making parts of the finial, I will then stop, sand up those parts before they become too weak, and then carry on working all the way along. This is actually my 12mm half-inch Ashley Isle skew, which is absolutely ideal for working on the smaller pieces like this. I find the skew just a lot easier to use on these types of things. You can use really light cuts and get an amazing finish. For sanding wise here, I'm just using 320 grit Abranet paper, and because of the tight edges, it's probably not the best paper to use. A paper backed paper would be best, but I've only got the cloth based, which is really what I should have used. It's interesting seeing how everybody makes finials. There's no set rule as to what a finial should look like. It's just a case of all these odd little shapes in there. I'm sure some people will say it's got to contain certain elements. Everyone is always different unless you're working from some form of a plan. Because this is a tree ornament and effectively it is being handled from time to time, I really didn't want to make this too thin. So at least this way, when you pick it up and put it down, it's not going to snap. Once all the pieces were made, it was just a case of gluing them in place.